Hi,
Hi.
Segura.
Okay, it worked.
It worked perfectly.
Whew.
Hi
Hello.
everybody.
Hello, everyone.
So as people start coming in, um, we can just take a minute and take a breath. I always like to do that before starting an Instagram live. People are coming in anyway, so anyone who's here, you are welcome to take a breath as well with us. But I just kind of like it because it's just so weird. Like
Yeah.
Ryan was like, "Are you grounded? Before are you feeling grounded?" I was like, "As grounded as I can be," as I stare at my face in a little phone on a
Yep.
screen while people come in and send hearts. It's really fun. But you want to take a little breath with me?
Yeah, please.
Anyone here? Let's do it at the same time. So we can close our eyes. I like to put my hands on my body somewhere, like on my thighs or just in a little snug hug. And let's just take 5 deep breaths. And one more, just inhale and exhale. And before we open our eyes and look back at the screen, Sidura, let's pick something in the room outside of the screen to look at first. Take in the details. Remind ourselves that this is actually where we are in the room with this item. And then come on back and meet me. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks so much for your beautiful stories this week and for
Thank you
joining me
for
here
sharing your
today.
space with me. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I loved hearing your story. I loved seeing you. I have your books here.
Aw.
They are beside me. They are on my special shelf. I have a
Aw.
special section of shelf for our teachers and our writers. When they publish their
And
books, it goes there.
and that must be growing.
It is growing. I
Yeah.
actually need a bigger bookshelf.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah, it
amazing.
is. It is amazing. It is amazing. We've been running this school for a really long time, so writing is such a long game that
Yeah.
now it's every year there are more and more grads publishing. So
Yeah.
and winning awards and being
Yeah.
nominated for awards. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't realize until I saw your newsletter that Francis is also
Yep.
yeah, so that's
Yep.
fantastic.
Yep. We
I'm
had
so
2
excited
prize
about that.
nominations for the Danuta Glad. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really exciting. So, um, I have a couple questions. Also, there was a question that someone asked that was really interesting
Oh, okay.
in the comments. Maybe we could start there
Sure.
and then see because we've got about 20 minutes together. Um, so the question was about giving feedback, and I'm just going to see if Ryan or Gabriella, if you're in there, is it possible to share the comment or the person who asked it? Potato chip fire engine, are you there? um, I can sort of crib, I can kind of paraphrase and remind and
Hmm.
remember it. And it was that it was quite right. They were quite right. Um, it's hard to know where to share your work, when to share your work. They were
Yes.
saying they have no idea if their stuff is good, great, or meh. And they don't know when they're sharing in a particular group. I mean, they don't know how to trust the group. So when
No.
sharing in a place, like how do you know? And also how to protect. There was a question about like if someone was
Ah,
just a little bit off or a little bit or like had some jealousy or something. If there was something going on in the person who's giving feedback, that could be projected and then taken on. And how do you know? And they ended by saying writing is so personal.
yep.
Where does feedback fit into that? Given that,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
There's a lot to unpack in that question. Um, you want me just to jump in?
Yeah, jump in. Like,
I,
what
I
would you? Yeah,
a
because
lot of feelings.
yeah,
A lot
yeah.
of
Oh, here's
feelings
the
about that.
question. Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Gabriella. She just
Yeah.
posted it in the comments, so
I
anyone
see
here, you
that.
can
I
see
don't
it.
know
Yeah,
what's good, great, or just met. Yeah, I
yeah,
received rave
yeah.
comments from friends who frankly aren't avid readers of anything I would find interesting. Okay, so I would say number one, don't don't submit your work for feedback to try to determine whether or not it's good or great. That for me is not what feedback is about. Um, and personally, I write a lot and sit with my stories for a long, long time before I show them to anybody,
Mm.
for the most part. So number one, you're not submitting to decide whether or not you are a great writer, or whether or not you deserve to be a writer, or whether or not you should keep doing. That's all work that you yourself have to do. And like I said in one of my posts, like a writer is a verb. It's something that you do, and
Yeah,
if you're committed to that craft, you just keep growing with it. That's that practice and that craft. Nobody can stop you from doing that. The feedback, what you want for feedback is you want to know whether or not something is working. And so for that can be, yes, so where that's tricky is making sure that you have a community or a group or a friend or whoever that you trust to be able to understand storytelling that way. Um, and B, to then also in some way remove yourself emotionally from that piece, and to understand that when you are asking someone for feedback, again, you're not looking for them to tell you that you are the next Margaret Atwood or whatever. What you're looking for is to say, tell me where this story works for you, and tell me where the story doesn't work for you. And then it's about the story. It's not about you. It's not about it, and it's not a value judgment about what you need to tell. It's, you've written that for some reason. You have something inside you that you need to say, you need to put down onto the page, and that you want ultimately for other people to read. And so what feedback should be giving you is whether or not that story that you are probably just discovering, you may not even know what it is you're trying to
that's
say.
right.
And that's where I have found feedback to be really helpful, is that when people talk with me about my work, and especially when they tell me what's working, it often will then help me to figure out, okay, so now I see where this is working, and now I see where this is not working.
Yeah, yeah. And everything you said, yes. And I loved when you said that being a writer is a verb, not a noun. I've been writing about that. I've been thinking about that myself.
Ah,
I've been reading about improvisation,
mm,
and that's what it's all about, right? It's a verb. Anyway, um, and I would also add that there's a large part of giving feedback that is, it's about the story and it's about the work, but it's also about the person giving the feedback. Like a
yes,
big section of that. Like that's not it's not bad that that's the case. It's just a big section of a big portion of what you receive from someone. And when you give feedback to someone else or talk about someone else's writing, a lot of that has to do with you.
and you say that in the course, and I go back to that in my
Hmm.
own reading now, when I read as a writer, that I'm reading for things that I need to work on. And so often, if you're looking for feedback, someone is going to
Yes.
respond to you about the things that they too are. So in terms of who to look for feedback, what's great about your program is that the people that are in the small class that you're in are really devoted, and I mean, they're committing themselves if they're coming into this program. So you know that you're already getting people who are also like you, committing to this writing process. Um, there's no guarantees about the experiences that other people bring to the page, but at least friends aren't necessarily the best people to read your work unless they're writing friends, and that's a little
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. 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 And there is something nice about having a shared language. So if you're talking
Yeah,
about the same stories, like in a course, like the intensive, you're talking about the same stories, you're doing the same thing. So there's a shared language first. So you're kind of on the same page. It's not like
yeah,
one of those workshops where you're thrown in and the first week of the workshop is the first person story. And that's what everyone's going to meet on, talking about this story. I mean, that's like, it's a very uneven place to start. It's
right,
hard to know where the center of the wheel even is. So
right.
it's nice to be with other people who are growing together. Really
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. And then just the last thing I would say to this, because I think the other side of that question is, how do I know that I'm giving good feedback to
Yes.
someone, as a reader? And I
Uh,
love what you do. What you do in the course is, remind people that, you're looking for, at least you start with two things that are working, point them to the things that are working, and then it's a draft. So one thing, one question,
yeah.
one
Yeah.
something that isn't sitting right with you. You don't need to labor somebody with all kinds of, and you don't
No,
have to tear. I think the other thing is, people sometimes forget they're not an English class anymore. When
that's
you're in a
right.
writing course, it's not an English class. You do not need to tear apart Charles Dickens to show that you're smart. That's not what this is about. This is about
So
helping
true.
somebody else on their journey
Yeah.
as a writer.
Yes. Yes. And the more, I mean, I say this too, we see this happen. The more you tear something apart, the more you like go into that groove, that you don't turn that off when you're alone at the desk on your own
Right.
page.
Right.
So all of those, like, you're feeding the inner critic by just sharpening it and honing it and sharpening it and practicing it. You're feeding the part of you that points out everything that's wrong about your own work.
Yep.
So why not feed the part of you that points out what you love about
Yeah.
other people's work, and feed that so you can do more of what you love on the page too.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Okay.
That was amazing. Next question. Well, what I wanted to, okay, so I wanted to ask you in particular, what makes you write? Why do you write? And earlier, just earlier in this response, you were saying, you've written this because you want someone to read it. There's something in it that wants to come out. Now, you've written you have a novel, a collection of short stories, and now you're working in writing for young people. And I am so curious how that's going, first of all. And is your motivation the same or different? How does it feel? How is it different? And are you writing for a different reason now or not?
Okay. So what I said earlier, which was, you're writing for a reason, you're writing because maybe, you want somebody to read this. That's actually not the reason I write. I actually would ideally, I don't want anybody to read it. Like, that is not why I write. If I could, romanticizing if I was back in like the 19th century and some benefactor was like, I will pay you to sit at your desk. And, that I would be, who wouldn't? But, that there's a certain freedom that I have to give myself to sit down when I sit down to work. And that freedom is that nobody is ever going to read this. There is that is an option. There is an option that nobody is ever going to. Once I have that freedom, then I can get going, because the reason that I write is that's my artistic expression. So when I teach creative writing to kids, I make a point of saying to them, some of you dance, some of you are into music, some of you are into visual art, some of you are into sports, or, anything like that's your mode of expression of the way that you figure out what's happening in the world. Well, writing is my way. And just to side note with kids, unfortunately what happens, because the whole mechanics of writing is something that obviously, kids need to learn, and they it's part of education. But unfortunately, what that means is that it's often creative writing is then not seen as an art. It's seen as more schoolwork. And so what I love to be able to do when I get in, with a group of kids, is to be like, let's create art here. Let's use words like you do paint. So that's why I write. I write because, first of all, it's actually the only way I know how to be. I've I guess in my life tried not writing, and I'm a really miserable person when I'm not writing. And so and before I found your course, I was like really at that crossroads where I thought, okay, maybe this is it. And thank God it wasn't. And I thank God I discovered I had many more stories to tell. But so that's why I write. Shifting to writing for children and young adults has been amazing. And everything in my writing life is like one door leads to the next, to the next. So I would not be where I am right now were it not for having been in your course, were it not for having joined you at AWP, however many years ago that was, remember? Becoming a student again. And that's another thing that I love to tell people, like, become a student again, allow yourself to be a student again, and to be at that place in your head where you're just starting out. And that's what I did when I joined your course, was like, I said, okay, now I'm going to pretend that I'm just starting out. I want to come at this with fresh eyes. And so after I did some course through you, I ended up doing, an intro course at the University of Toronto continuing studies program. And it was intro for writing for children and young adults. And the course itself was frankly not that exciting, but the course material, I was like, yes, I need to try this. And so now that I've opened up my eyes to, or been introduced to all these other forms of storytelling, be it picture book, or like I've just finished a draft of a middle grade historical fiction in verse.
Oh.
Like, none of that I ever would have thought, right?
You finished your draft.
Yeah, I finished the draft of that. I'm feeling very,
wow.
very, very proud of that.
Wow.
That's part of my creative
in
thesis.
rhyming? Like in rhyming?
It's verse? Not rhyme. No, it's free verse.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So like, and that was, so all, and then I did a whole semester. So I'm doing an MFA right now in writing for children and young adults through the Vermont College of Fine Arts. And I did a whole semester of just picture book work. And again, but all of those lessons that I learned from the story intensive, you know, or any other, it doesn't matter how you're telling stories, and whether you have 500 words to tell that story or 2,500 words to tell that story, it's the same lessons. So, yeah, and then the other day I was in the
Hmm.
park and somebody said something to me, and I'm like, okay, I think I know now what my next project is going to be, which is something completely different. Um, so I'm just, and I, you know, like, and I'm not going to say what that is. It's just to say, like, I'm always looking for different stories, and having now had the experience of writing in these different formats, I can have a better sense of where a story might fit. And that just opens up all the possibilities for me. And so I'm not as afraid of the blank page. Still afraid, but
Yes.
not as afraid of the blank page,
A
as
little
maybe
bit
I
of
was
fear is
before.
kind of good. Like a little bit of fear is where the enjoyment comes from. Otherwise, we'd be bored, right?
That's true. That's true. That's true. But I feel it every day. Like,
Yeah.
I feel that resistance every
Yeah.
single day. Every
Yeah.
single day I have to battle.
Isn't
And I'm
it?
like, aren't I over this already?
Yeah.
I'm not.
It's so strange. It's such a paradox because on the one hand, as you said, like if someone just gave you a desk and said, "This is your role now. You just sit here and you write. This is what it is." The resistance still come, even though that's the goal, that's the love, that's the heart of it. The resistance is still there, like a shadow. It's like it casts a shadow. Of the
Every
love is
single
always
day,
casting a shadow.
every single day I sit down and I'm afraid I'm going to have nothing to say.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So
And so
then, what
every
do you
single
do?
day I have to work through it and be like, no, you do have something to say.
What do you do for everybody
Um,
who's watching who
yeah.
also
What do
feels
I
that
do?
way?
So one of the ways that I preempt that is I make a lot of lists. So on Sunday, so I've first of all, one of the practices that I've taken away from the story intensives is that I block out every day a certain amount of time for my writing, and it's the same
Yeah.
time every day, and that's what works for me.
Mhm.
But on Sunday, I will sit down, maybe Monday morning, but usually Sunday, and I will plan out the week, and I will look at. So because I'm doing this MFA program, there's certain things that, you know, in terms of packet work that I have to make sure is done and handed in. But whatever the project is, I'll sit down. I'll be like, okay, what's the goal for the end of the week? What do I need to do on Monday? What do I need to do on Tuesday?
Mhm.
And by the way, and that's not just the writing. That's also my own physical exercise. That's, you know, going
Right.
grocery shopping. That's meal planning. Like it all goes on that list because I'm a big fan of crossing things off. That
Yeah.
so. Um, but where that helps me is it gives me more of a framework in terms of the project, and it could just be by the end of this week I want to have written 20 pages, so I need to write
Right.
4 pages a day, 5 pages a day,
Right.
whatever it
Right.
is. Yeah.
So it's just the structure. It's
Yeah.
just the benefit, again, the benefit of glory of structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And having that structure means it takes away some of the anxiety of not knowing what I'm going to do. And so, okay, I know it's
Yeah.
10 o'clock Monday. I know what
Yeah.
I'm doing. And now and that really
Yeah.
got me through the pandemic as well, because that's been like everything. I have really fallen far more into my routines than out of them. Like I need them. I need them. And especially with
Yeah.
like, are my kids
Yeah.
in school? Are they out of school? Are they, you know, where? Yeah. Something about those
All the
routines have really anchored
ambiguity.
me. Yeah.
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 Yeah. The ambiguity that just floats around, and there's so much of a work in progress that is just by nature ambiguous. It's ambiguous
Yeah.
by nature. That's what you're making it. So having anything that you can, like anything you can rest upon or depend upon structure wise or
Yeah.
routine wise. Yeah. You know what's
And
interesting? Go
mm,
ahead.
oh, I was just going to say that the other thing that gets me in the chair every day, like is the not the promise, but the potential that I might sit down and write something I had no idea I had in me to say.
Yeah.
Because when that happens,
Oh,
that's what, like, publishing is wonderful, and you know, and I want to have a really, you know, a successful writing life, et cetera, et cetera. But what really excites me are those moments when I sit back and I'm
yes.
like, whoa, did I do that? Did that come out of me? Did I
Yes.
say that? So yeah, so there's hoping that might happen.
Me too. That's my draw as well. It's that feeling of wonder and surprise, and sometimes I say it feels like going through a portal where you
Yeah.
don't know, you just the joy of discovering that you don't know everything while you're
And
sitting down to do the thing you know how to do,
isn't it funny
ostensibly.
though that, like, you know, so both of us I think are very, very centered in our routine. So in that way we're quite organized, but actually it's having that organization so that we can be completely disorganized in our creativity.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I have like extra routines in order to just do nothing, like to just have it be whatever it wants to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. Well, Sadhura, thank you so much
Thank you,
for being
Sarah.
here today. Thank you for being here all week. Thank you for teaching with us. I know that if anyone's watching and you would love to be in Sadhura's class, hang on. She's finishing her MFA. She's not teaching for us this fall, but she's here and she's very much a part of the community, as you can see.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we love you. We love you.
I love you too. I love you too. Mwah. Have a wonderful
Thank
weekend.
you. Bye, you
Take
too.
care.
Have a
Bye.
great weekend. Bye. We are inviting Hajra. Hajra!
Hi! Wow, that was easy.
Hi.
I've
That
never
was
done
super
this before.
easy.
Yes.
Welcome to the world of IG Live.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for your beautiful stories and posts this week. It's been such a highlight to hear
Oh, you're
your
so welcome.
voice. It's so wonderful.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
thank you
for
for
giving
being
me this
here.
space.
How are you? How is your writing
I'm,
today? How are you and your writing doing today?
oh gosh. I was actually just talking to a very dear friend of mine who's also a writer, Hillary, you know her.
Yeah.
Yes, we were talking about my writing, which is, by the way, can I just say I love Sidora's conversation? Like she's such an amazing writer and teacher, and I was just sitting like nodding along the whole time. Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna be a bit of a downer, but I'm not doing so well with my writing these days. But I know why. And I just finished working on a story that was really heavy. Like it was just very emotionally heavy, and I needed to finish it because I had a deadline. So I did. So I worked on it. I worked on it. I worked on it. I got it done, and it was the first time, like in my whole writing life, that I felt like I need a break. And it was like the first time in my life where I looked at my desk and I didn't feel like I wanted to be there. So I'm taking a break from my writing, but this experience has sort of taught me a lot about what it takes to be a writer, and what it takes to bring like really emotionally heavy like topics to the page. So that's where I'm at. We're in a good place, as in like I know that
Yeah.
I will go back when I feel ready to go back. But right now I'm taking a little break because I feel like I need it. I feel like I just need to recuperate.
Yeah, we create in cycles. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that taking a break is a not just a valid but a necessary part of the creative cycle. I
Yeah.
mean, everything that creates needs a
Yes.
rest period.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to talk more if you feel like up to sharing about it. I'd love to talk more about the experience because that's it's something that a lot of us
Yeah.
come across. I mean, even in feel good fiction, as they
Yeah.
say, feel good fiction, there you have to write your protagonists into unresolvable places. You paint them
Yeah.
into corners on purpose. I mean, the a story without conflict becomes it isn't the same kind of page turner. So when there's actual and when you're bringing yourself to the page, as you do, and as we teach our writers to do in the story intensive, like really living with the characters and through the characters, the emotions, you're living the emotions. So
Hmm.
physiologically, it's also happening to you.
Yeah.
So how was the experience for you, and how, I mean, taking a break now, yes, but in and through the writing of it, did you resist it? Were you pulled to it? What did it feel like? How did you stay with it and finish it?
Oh, that was yeah, it was a very interesting experience. So this is a story that like I've been writing in my head for 10 years, right? It's and even just talking about it now, like I can feel like that tightness in my chest come back. But and I don't know what it was about sort of the pandemic. So last year I just said it just kind of just kept coming back like more and more. Whereas over the years, it would just sort of be a whisper, and I would just feel like I'm not ready to write this yet. Like I didn't feel ready. But last year, it just sort of kept coming back to me, and I thought, I think it's time. I think it's time to sit down and write the story. So I wrote the first draft of it while I was actually teaching the intensive last year, which is why I was struggling so much with my writing. I don't know if you remember from our teacher calls. Like every call,
Yeah.
I would be like, everyone would talk about, how their writing is going, and I would be like, I'm struggling so much. I don't know what this story is. I don't know what's happening with it. And it was a very heavy story. It's about sexual abuse. So so it was interesting because like the resistance that I felt while writing it was very different than anything I've ever felt before. Like normally it's just sort of this resistance of like, what am I going to say? Like, am I going to have anything to write? I don't know what's going to come out on the page. But this time, like I would physically feel like anxiety in my chest when I knew like, my writing time was coming up. And so that was sort of like a hurdle that I really had to overcome like every day. And honestly, the only reason that I think I got the story done was because an editor reached out to me and he asked me to write something for his magazine. And this happened to be the story that I was working on at the time. And it was just like, it was a sign that I really just needed to get this done. So, and because normally like I write a first draft and I take a very long break, like usually like, at least a month, 2 months, like I'll write something else. But this time, like this was the only thing I had written like all throughout the pandemic. So I told him, this is, I have a very messy first draft. I'm going to try to finish it. I don't know if I will like by your deadline, but I will try. So, so I had to force myself to come to the page every day because I knew I had this deadline. And this was like the only thing that honestly kept me coming back to the page. I don't know if I would have finished it as fast as I did if I didn't have that deadline. But it was hard because like right every day I'm putting myself, and it's a first person story too. So it was like every day I'm putting myself in the shoes of this character, like writing her experiences, and it just felt like really heavy. And at night, like I would just binge watch Netflix, which is very unusual for me. Like I never do that. Like I'll watch, one or two like random episodes, but I would just keep going. And it was so weird because like I didn't know it, is it the pandemic? Is it the fact that schools are closed? My kids are home? And it just like, the more I kind of sat with those emotions, I realized like, I need to purge. Like this is just too, like, this is too much. Like it felt very heavy to be in that space, to be writing that story. So after I was finished and I sent it out, I was just like, I need a break. Yeah.
Yes. Well, this is something that I want to look at. I mean, we have talked about it. We've touched upon it in past years, but this year, because of the year that all of us have been having, I brought in Annie Bray to give us the somatic practices and the somatic exercises because did you try any of them by chance? Did any of them work for you? Did you
no,
have one
I didn't really
ritual
try any
in
of them.
particular?
No, I just do
helped?
your writing ritual. So when I would come to the page, like I don't just kind of dive into the story. Like I do, a timed like letter exercise where, you just start with, and we do this in lesson 1, right? So this is sort of the foundation. So doing those things helped like ease me to get into writing because I knew that when I, came to my desk, I'm not just diving in, like I have a little something to ground me, but that's a good idea too, because I hadn't looked into the somatic practices yet.
Yeah. I mean, there's one that she gives for every writer at every, like there's a special one for every lesson, but there's one that's just, before you start writing and then when you finish writing, and it's a ritual you go through, whether you have an actual room with a door or not. There's like, you visualize that you are entering a separate space where you're going to do this work and be who you are and experience what you experience. You recognize that you're going to have a physiological expression as you express whatever it is that you are writing, and that some of it may be a surprise to you. Like some of it you can't be entirely prepared when you go to the page, right? Because you don't know everything. You have to be open to receive what the story wants to give you. And that can be so scary and difficult if the character is in a really tricky or dangerous place.
Yes.
And then the ritual Annie's somatic ritual also takes you through a visualization and a small guided meditation that you can call up anytime before you then enter your real life. So it's a way to like let it out of your body, and just like to be aware that we carry this in our body and our nervous system, and it's not something, writing isn't just something that happens in our head. It's a full embodied experience. And then, you know, that's what you're transmitting to your reader as well. So all of those felt emotions that you gave to your work as you were working on it, on this story, you are transmitting that emotional experience to your readers. And authors need a lot of self-care around that. Like there's care. We can't, it's not good, I don't think, to skip it. So I've been thinking about it a lot. And then last year I was just like, no way, we're putting this in, we're building this right into the program, because every writer needs to know how to do this.
That
especially if we're
really
going to, they're there for you. Hajra, they're there.
Thank you. I'm going to need to go back and look at them now. I took a writing workshop, I think a month or two ago, and I read like the first part of the story in this workshop. And one of the writers who was in it she was an Indigenous woman, and you know, and I told him, like, this is a fictional story, like, you know, this didn't happen to me. And she said, you know, it might not be your truth, but it is truth. So you have to take care of yourself when you're telling these truths. And that was really like eye-opening and validating and profound, because I didn't expect this kind of experience writing this story. Like it really took me by surprise, like how much it took away from me to get this story to the page. I
got some shivers there hearing her words, that this is it might not be your truth, but it's truth.
Yes. And I felt the exact same way. It was just almost like I froze thinking, yes, like this is why, because it might not be my truth, but you know, it's the truth for so many women, like across every community, right? That and to like hear these truths and to say these truths, like always just tightens us up.
We are connected in so many ways. So, and that is part of the work that you do as a writer, as an author. I wonder if actors have more tools around this work that they do. Because I'm just thinking about the roles that people are in when they tell really difficult stories, and like, how do they, there must be techniques in, like, and it's probably in the body. It probably has to do with movement, actually, to let go of it, because there's chemistry. There's chemistry that comes from
I mean, when you said that, I just remembered the Joker from Batman. Right? I can't remember his name.
I didn't watch it.
Oh,
the Joker.
Okay, the Joker. Yeah, but like in the Batman movie, and then I can't remember the actor's name. God, that's so terrible. And I think he committed suicide, and a lot of people sort of linked that experience of of playing that character must have been like so intense. I mean,
Ryan's giving us Joachim, he said, but no,
no,
can't be.
It's like the trilogy, like the three Batman movies.
Heath Ledger.
Yes.
Thanks, Sonia. Heath Ledger.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we need to resource ourselves. We need to resource ourselves in order to go into the true shadows and heal what needs healing. And stories do that. And I think there is something that by bringing storytelling into a more academic place that we have done over the past couple hundred years, something has been lost in that aspect, I think.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Thank you. I really am looking forward to reading this story when it comes.
It's coming out next week.
What? Where can we read it? Where can we read it?
It's going to be published in the Puritan. So it was honestly like the
Puritan
fastest story. Yes.
Sorry, I'm just.
I know. It's honestly like the fastest like writing, publishing, editing experience I've had, because the editor reached out to me and he said, I really want to publish something about you. Like, do you have something? And I was like, I have this very messy draft. I'm going to try. And then he liked the story. He gave me some edits on it. So I finished those edits, and yes, it's coming out next week. So I'm really anxious about that. Like, knowing that it's going to be out there is just giving me more. Like,
yeah, of course.
but
You're gonna need to you'll need to resource yourself through this whole project. It will come again. It will happen again. Like, it will come.
Yeah.
So, in the reading of it, I highly recommend Annie Bray's Somatic Practices.
I will check them out for sure. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I highly recommend them. Just like, it's not, it's not bad to be emotionally activated at all. It's what we want and what we want to do. And there's a way for you to make room for that and take care of that and make sure that it doesn't become ingrown or suppressed or come out in other ways,
Yeah, but I think also, like, the flip side of it is that's really the only way, like, the only place to write from is that if you're not feeling emotionally invested, like, in your own work, it doesn't come out on the page. Like, it falls flat on the page. So that's sort of the dichotomy of, like, wanting to write and being emotionally invested, and then, like, the heaviness of having to feel all of that.
I applaud your knowing to rest now.
Thank you. Yeah.
Like, knowing that that's what you need. And, and also, I'm really curious when and how writing will come back to you. Like, when it will begin, how you'll feel ready again, and where you'll take it next.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm starting to feel like more and more like, okay, I think I can write now. But now that the story's coming out, now I'm more like, I don't know yet. So we'll see.
Maybe give yourself some joy.
Yes.
Like something like something humorous, or a personal essay about pleasure, or something that, like, gives you some extra nutrients now.
Yes.
Refill your well. Yeah.
Yes. That's a really good point.
We have a few more minutes before Sonia joins us. Let me just see my questions that I had for you.
We went on sidetrack.
No, we didn't. That was, I wanted to ask you why you wrote, and you answered that beautifully. I guess, you talked about taking a rest. So maybe I'll ask this, just simple in closing. What is a technique or a skill that you learned, like a tip or a technique that you learned in the intensive that you carry with you, that you come back to?
Honestly, it's reading like a writer. Like, I think we hear that a lot about learning from other stories and other writers' work, but it's really hard to know how to do that, right? And I think before I took the intensive, I wasn't really sure, like what am I looking for when I read a story? I mean, it's a full form story, and it sounds amazing, and I love the story, but I don't know how to take what I need from it. And in the intensive, like, we really learn and develop that skill, like, in every lesson. And I think that's something that, like, I continue to carry with me. And so I really love lesson 7, like the lesson on influence, for that reason. And then another thing that I learned from Jen Manuel, who I think was a teacher with us last year as well, she also has a revision course.
Yes.
And one of the things she talks about is actually, like, writing out stories that you love. And I do that all the time now.
Like, in your own handwriting?
Yes. So, like, I will take a story and I will actually copy it, like, word for word. And it's honestly, like, it's so mind-opening, the way that really helps you understand the mechanics of the story and the writer's techniques. Like, you really see sentence to sentence, like, the movement of the story and what the writer's doing. And it sounds like, and I try to say this to, like, other writers that I work with, like, when I give them manuscript critiques or coaching, that, take a story that you love and that you really want to emulate or write like, and do that. And I feel silly to say it, because, like, unless you actually do it and you experience that, it's difficult to really put into words how meaningful of an experience that can be.
Yeah. Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that reminder. It works for
You're welcome.
everything. It works for
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
It's like copying the brush strokes or copying the dance
Yeah.
moves, you know?
Yeah.
Like other artists do it. Why do writers have to be
Yes.
so original all the time? How are we supposed to learn? We have to
Yes.
copy other
Yes.
people.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've the my one big takeaway from the intensive has been like how to write with influence, and you'll always like find original ways of saying what you want to say. Like just because you're
Yeah.
copying another writer's words doesn't mean you're gonna like just steal their style. Like,
Plagiarize. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's still you'll still write like but it's the techniques that you learn that you'll now be able to like apply to your own work.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, Hajra, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being one of our teachers. Thank you
You're
for
so
showing
welcome.
up in your writing with truth the way you do. We love having you. We love having you part of the
Thank
school.
you. Thank you. I'm
And
so happy to be here.
me too.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the day. Have a beautiful weekend, and
You
we'll
too.
see you soon.
Yes. Okay. Take
Okay.
care. Bye.
Bye. Hi, everybody. I'm going to wave to everybody. Sonia! Hi!
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see your face.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to see you. And it's great to see your Kanban board of sticky notes behind you.
Yes.
Look
You
at
can see
that.
what I have left to do and what I've already done.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
So yeah, that's my whole book right there.
Wow. Let's just take a moment. Can you just lean over just a little bit? Can we look at it?
it?
Wow.
So the orange notes are the chapters, and then, what has happened in each chapter. And then kind of as I'm revising, I'm moving them over. Because
Beautiful.
this was a really great way for me to see how imbalanced certain sections were. Like one
Tell me
chapter
more.
would have 25 post-it notes of action points and things that happened, and other chapters would have 2. And so I could see where I needed to space things out or give things a little more detail. And so it was a really powerful moment to see it all up like that, and gave me a new perspective on the whole project. So although now they've been up for a little while,
It's
they're starting to
beautiful.
fade from the sun. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. And the sticky part starts to like, after a while, my outlines, when I get the post-it notes, I kind of have to redo them periodically because they start to feel like shells or husks, like insect shell husks, kind
Ooh,
of like they don't have any more life. And then I have to like rewrite
They're a
it
little
again,
empty.
yeah, a little bit empty. So I have to like rejuvenate them with fresh ink or fresh sticky. Yeah. Thank you so much for your beautiful posts and stories this week. It was so wonderful to have you taking over. It was such a highlight to have you taking over our
Oh,
feed.
thank you.
Um,
It was a
and
lot of fun.
I have a few questions for you.
Okay.
One question that I would like to know is, what is a question that you have been pondering about writing lately?
Ooh. I think I've been mulling over kind of like the big question of why. Like, why am I in this big project when it feels so hard and feels so unknowable? Even though I have a whole first draft and I have done all of this work of like,
Yeah.
I know what it is, but like, why do we put ourselves through this?
Oh, let's dig into this, because this is the
Yeah.
question I'm asking myself too. So
Yeah. I think
okay.
part of it is I'm curious and I want to understand more of how I see the world, how I understand the world through writing fiction, which is a different experience for me than writing nonfiction.
Yeah.
And I'm finding it much more challenging in a different way. I mean, they're both challenging. So it's making me very uncomfortable and very uncertain. And I know that means it's something good and that is a place to put my energy. I understand that. And yet, like you were talking about earlier, the resistance is there and it's huge every day.
Yeah.
And that shadow is real. And that's
Yeah,
also how I know that it's something that I want to keep doing.
like the bigger the shadow,
Yeah,
the
the
bigger
bigger
the
the
shadow,
desire. Yeah.
the bigger the desire. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about you? Why?
Well, I know. Well, I also have been asking myself why, if it's so hard, why? So
Mhm.
what I've been looking at, I've really been looking at shadow. I've been looking at it deeply. I think that the story that I wrote a novel, quite a first draft last year, quite quickly for me. Usually they take fiction takes a long time, a story takes a long
Mhm.
time to move through me. And I think in that relationship between the shadow, the resistance, like the shadow and the desire, was so peaked. It was like bigger than any previous project that I had written.
Mm.
So the highs and the lows, the valleys were like very, very deep and very scary, and then the highs were like very high. And so I've been asking myself about shadow just as a concept. I've actually put the project, it's now in a drawer, it's resting, it's like baking, and I'm letting the dough kind of rise.
It needs to, yeah, rise or
it needs to
marinate.
it needs to just let it think about itself. I have, yeah. And while it's doing that, we have an agreement that um I'm going to investigate the very thing. Like, I think that's what the story has to teach me about.
Mm.
Something. I mean, this
Yeah.
is all very nebulous, but I think that the story itself is teaching me something that I need to learn before I get to the next level of writing the
Mm.
story.
Mhm.
So, and my last novel did that to me as well. It came out in a draft that I didn't understand, and then I had to live and then come back to it and see, like, oh, through the living, then I came back. So it's almost like is I go into such a subconscious place when I'm writing, or I open up to such a subconscious
Mhm.
amount, which
Mhm.
that's what you're talking about too, right? This, like, it's unknowable. I mean, of course it's not unknowable. You wrote it, but it's unknowable. It's like from the underworld,
Yeah, it
you know?
comes from this unknowable place.
Yeah.
And um, I like what you're talking about because each story has something to teach us in terms of, the process. That has been I think, a big learning point for me. And then also like the content and the characters within that story. They have their own things to teach us. And yeah, I think that's part of why I keep coming back to projects that feel difficult, is because I want to see what that learning is and what growth can happen by
Yeah.
sticking with it and pushing forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this is a TV reference, but do you know the show The Magicians, or the books by Lev Grossman called
I
The
don't.
Magicians?
Yeah.
I was just watching an episode last night and I was like, oh, that's what it is. There's the characters need to escape this place in order to, like, become real. I'm sort of paraphrasing. No spoilers for anybody. But in order to get to the place, in order to find the door, the escape route, they have to, in their mind, go back to, like, a memory that is so buried that it's just so buried they don't ever look at, like, some completely unconscious or subconscious memory that they don't want to look at. They need to look at that thing in order to escape, which is so Joseph Campbell. It's so, like, it's shadow work. It's beautiful.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're just illustrating it beautifully on this show. They've done their work. You can see they've been reading about the shadow, but that's kind of it. Like, the story, I feel like especially when we're on a journey with a novel, which is such a journey of time. It's such a long game.
Hmm.
We're opening ourselves up every day to what these characters want, and it is so close to dreaming, that it really reminds me of when you have a dream and you don't understand the dream. It's also trying to tell you something about something, and it is the practice of going back and just, like, looking at the symbols and writing them, writing the characters and writing it all,
Hmm.
to see what you don't know about what you're writing. It's a
That's what I was going to
paradox.
say. Like the symbols that are left behind in that kind of dreamlike state when you wake up are the clues that you have to work from. And that can be what happens in your first draft. Like, you have these people in these places and you don't understand why they're there. And it's up to you to kind of put together those clues, or dream a little bit more, let it marinate,
Yeah.
and see why your subconscious brought that up in the first place.
Yes.
And it's hard to figure that out with your thinking mind sometimes. We have to,
Absolutely.
as much as I would like to, just like sit down and figure it out, you need the time, like you were saying before. Like it needs time and space. And that can be frustrating.
Yeah, it works. I think that's one thing that sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong, because you've done more memoir writing, but fiction seems to have it work on another time frame. Like it needs its rest time. It needs its like it needs you to be patient, and the more you try to think it through and bust it out and hustle it out, the more it will retract. The more it'll hide from you. The and I wonder if nonfiction is a little bit more given. In your experience, does it give to the conscious mind a little bit more than fiction?
I think it does, in the sense that you have a story already, but the challenge then becomes in what is this, figuring out what the structure or the vessel is to tell this story, and what kinds of layers or braids you want to bring into it. And so that can be, I mean, there's definitely a more subconscious aspect to it, but you can intellectualize it and kind of plow forward. But I find that with both, they need rest time. Yeah. Particularly after finishing a draft. Like you said, it needs to go away. And just be
simmer.
out of sight and out of mind for a little bit. And I trust that during that time away, that my subconscious is still working on it. And the hope is that when you come back, some connections will have been made that can liven things up again and help you make new connections.
And after the rest, your well is refilled a little bit. So you have a little bit more energy and will, because there's another piece of this. Like I love that your outline is behind you as we're speaking right now. I just love that like, it's like in there the whole time, but I'm thinking, there is a piece that's just like, you just decide. So like, you know, is this supposed to happen in Oregon, or is this supposed to happen in Washington? Like at a certain point, you just decide. It's not one is the right answer, and so much of the power of your art is in those decision points. Like you just decide, and then you make it right, and then you're like, oh, so it's not like you're looking at a multiple choice question. Am I going to get the right answer here? Am I going to get the right plot answer? It's not. And I feel personally, anyway, there's often a bit of like I need to have like some caffeine or go for a run first or something. Physically, I need to like alter my chemistry before I feel empowered enough to make those decisions. And if I'm like feeling too tired or fatigued, then I have more of a propensity to feel like there's a right answer out there and I don't know it. Do you ever feel that?
That makes total sense. Yep. Yeah, you have to be in the right headspace, and to know yourself and help you get to that headspace is very helpful. Yeah, I find that making those choices can move you forward. And even if you change your mind later and you followed one choice to a dead end, you're like, okay, that's not it. I'm going to go back and explore the other path. I'm experiencing that right now. Actually, and it came to me in a walk. And so I think the physical component of writing is huge. There's so much comes to me when I'm moving my body and I'm not trying to actively think about my story. And I'll just be walking my dog and listening to the birds and thinking about what I have to do that day. And then like, I'll get this flash of like, oh, so-and-so should not be in this situation. Or maybe your story starts in the middle and not where you have it in the beginning. And so then that gives me something to chew on for the rest of the walk. And then when I come to my writing time, I can think about and maybe do some free writing around that and see if it has the right energy to keep going forward in that direction.
Yes. I feel like it's something about, like, it's so fun. You feel like it's just like when insights drop, it just feels like it just takes away all the rest. Everything else goes away for that moment.
And that's one of the reasons why we keep writing, right? We're hoping that we'll get more of those moments because they feel so good.
They do feel so good. They do feel so good. And there are ways that you can, I mean, it's pretty mysterious, but there are ways you can like design your life so you have more of them. Like you know that you need to move your body. So you go for a walk and you do that regularly, and you need. And I was talking to Catherine Wright, a sleep coach, the other day for a newsletter that we're putting out in July on wellness. So she's talking about sleep, and the connection between sleep and creativity is so strong. Hearing her talk about what sorts of things you can do to make sure you have a good sleep, they parallel so closely what things you can do to make sure that you have a good, like a gentle and generous creative relationship with a relationship with your creativity. It's like there are so many similarities. You need stillness, you need activity, like going for walks. Like, it's really interesting. It must have something, there must be something going on there.
Yeah, there's more of
Don't know what it is.
that mind-body connection that we don't really understand at play.
Why do
right?
we separate it anyway? What is it with the separation?
Yeah. Good question.
So Sonia, where do you think your writing is going to take you this summer? That's my other question for you.
Right now, I am feeling really called to reading other writers and kind of setting aside my push toward finishing this revision and just letting it rest for a little bit longer and reading. And that's one of the things I often love to do in the summer. And I think it's a huge support to writing. And so I'm looking forward to just giving myself the permission to read whatever I want and read widely and read a lot. And I'm hoping that the urge to write within that will still be there and will come back in a playful way and not in a, like, this is your time to write and you must sit here and write. But just like when you get one of those ideas and you have to run and write it down. More spontaneity.
Yes.
Is what I'm hoping for my writing this summer, and pleasure in reading.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think I told you this when we spoke earlier this year that I went through the story course, and for the 10-year anniversary, I revamped it, and I went through and tried to take out all the references of writing as work, writing as hard work.
Oh, good.
I like, that's one of the edits I made. Like, we don't have to Puritan this up. Yeah. We have a few more minutes. Is there anything that you'd like to share? I mean, we're super excited to have you on our teaching team for the Story Intensive this year. Is there anything you'd like to say or invite or ask?
I'm really excited to have the opportunity to kind of be a part of this course in a new way. And I'm excited to highlight, in addition to what you're bringing to the course, to highlight some LGBTQIA+ authors and hopefully explore some stories from the writers in the program. So I want to invite anybody who is a part of this group who is thinking about taking the intensive to take the plunge, and we will explore what it means to be a colorful character in the world and how to write our stories in a way that is true and honest and tender and odd, and there is a safe place to figure out how to do that and to share it with other people who get it. Yeah.
Oh, Sonia, thank you so much. I'm so happy that you're here with us. I love working with you. We love having you in the school already.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
It's going to be good.
Sometimes I think back to when we first met and joke that we met during a hurricane, which is partially true.
We did. We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I was in a completely different place at that time, but I knew that when we met, there was something significant happening. And I'm so glad that we've stayed connected all these years, and that, knowing you helped bring me back to writing. And so I'm so grateful for our friendship.
Thank you, Sonia. We'll see you soon.
Yes.
And thank you again so much. And thanks to everybody who joined us. We had a wonderful group today. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any questions from anyone who you've heard from today, including Sonia, or me about the Story Intensive or any of our other programs at the Writing School, please get in touch. You can DM me, you can write something in the comments field, you can reach out to support@saraselecki.com. Lots of ways to find me. Just ask. We're here. All right, have a wonderful afternoon and a beautiful weekend.
Thank you. You too. Bye, Sarah.
Okay, bye, Sonia.